Welcome to Who's There, our continuing exploration of what is within you, your motivations, aspirations, your capabilities, and how you define rewards in your life that can inform your organization's leaders for better outcomes. Hi, I'm Curt Meinhold, along with Robert Schott. And Robert, this is our first episode, so I wanted to take a moment to talk about our theme of Who's There, which includes a question mark and an exclamation point. You and I met not too long ago, but what was the kind of motivation for you to, which I think you brought this up to me, the idea, and we kind of got together and decided to do this. So do you want to speak a bit about that?
Yeah, sure, Curt. And thanks for the great introduction of our theme, Who's There? It's hard to know exactly where to start. And I know that through our dialogue, we'll be reflecting on our past as things that in our minds have shaped where we are today and where we're looking for the future. But this particular acquaintance of you and I came about back in January, and I had an opportunity to think about the theme of rewards in a work environment that reflected on the traditional reward systems that we're all accustomed to, compensation, pay, benefits, acknowledgement, prizes, all sorts of things, time off, all the things that make up how employer views the reward structure to keep individuals motivated and helping towards the successful outcomes of a business. But in my own journey and through some conversations with experts in the field of rewards, it occurred to me that in my own personal life, rewards maybe comes about maybe beyond what is happening in my workplace. And I'll say some of the most rewarding points in my life have come from the workplace, but outside. And it became an area of study through these conversations to think about, well, what is it that's within me that I feel rewarded by, and what would benefit my employer for knowing about that? And then from there, how would design of my engagement with the employer, the way they design learning and development, things that would help maybe supplement areas of interest that I have and help me grow individually and professionally. And the outcome of that would be to provide greater productivity in maybe areas that were not realized by my employer that I could do, but also adds to my track that I'm on in my life, such that the work product, the learning development leads to development of myself in other parts of my life. And so when I'd become acquainted with the work that you were doing in the spirit of skill digging, you became a point of contact to reach out and talk about this theme. So that's when we became acquainted back in January, and here we are. So maybe you could just reflect on that original conversation we had to see how this has come about that we fit together.
Yeah, it's as you were talking through that, I was thinking, for me, the idea of Skill Divvy, which you mentioned, which is a platform I'm working on with one of my business partners, it was thinking about the whole person at work. We have kind of moved into a society, in my opinion, that wants to specialize everything. And when I think back to the building of this country, we used to have really generalists. There was that idea, which I believe leads into broader topics, right? Authenticity in leadership, authenticity at work, all of these types of broader topics. But at the end of the day, we're not just designers or product managers or whatever job title we're giving. We are more than that. We're human beings that have a whole host of interests, a whole host of motivations, a whole host of things that we want to accomplish, during this journey that is our lives. And for me, I've been working in technology a long time, but I began working in technology as a way to support my music career. That was what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a musician. I was never a very good musician, but I wanted to do that work and I wanted to write and record, and technology gave me a way to kind of fund that. And what became clear to me as I've gotten older is if organizations were aware of this aspect of me, they could actually leverage it. So if marketing needed a new song or a new jingle, or maybe they need help thinking through something in a creative way, because creativity has always been important to me, I could be a resource within the organization that doesn't cost the money. It doesn't require contracting that out. It doesn't require hiring its consulting firm. So it would be a benefit to that organization, but it would be a benefit to me because it would give me the ability to leverage my creativity and to kind of stretch those muscles, if it were, within the working environment while supporting the company. And I believe it would actually make me a more loyal employee. It would make me more loyal to the company. It would make the company more aware of what I can do to help them push forward. And it would make all of us happier all around. So Skill Divvy came out of that idea, and I'm not going to go into that deeply here. Skill Divvy, I'm sure, is a tool we'll touch on as we go through this podcast. But that was kind of my motivation. And when I met you for the first time and you were talking about rewards, which is language, I don't generally come across in the work that I do, but when you explained it, it made a lot of sense. And I think there's a lot of overlap between rewards with regard to compensation, or even things like prizes and bonuses, and just those, I don't know, what you probably have a better word than me, but soft rewards of actually having that space to do things that you enjoy doing at work. I think that's a type of reward, and I think that that's something that companies, and particularly larger organizations, kind of miss out on.
When we got together and you talked about the point you just made about being a musician and how that can fit in, because one of the examples I was using in my conversations, one of the things I realized was, what if, let's just say, call it a retail environment, and you have a cashier doing their thing and checking out customers, but suppose that individual is working because they're trying to build a band. And what I was saying was, just take a cashier at a retail store, right? They want to be a musician, so they're working to build money, get money to pay for their gear. So what if that department store had a music department, and they learned that the individual was interested in music? Well, why don't you go actually work in the music department or CD department or the musical equipment department? And that way you're having the conversations on that theme. And what if you took it another step further, where the employer realized there was 30 people in this location out of 500 who had an interest in music, and maybe you gave them a space after hours where they could bring their gear and jam together, and just take it to another level. So it creates an outlet for that personal aspiration, being a musician, and it shows connection with the employer because they got your back. That might foster more loyalty, as you mentioned. So that was really kind of funny when I heard you describe your own background, when I was thinking the same way.
And I don't think that I'm unique in that. I don't think it's novel. Most of the people that we engage with, my experience has been, and I don't want to paint with too broad a brush here, but my experience is specific people, particularly people that start businesses or run businesses, they are, to start or run a business, you're going to have to be a generalist of some stripe. But having said that, you also have to be driven by some type of goal or objective, right? There's some type of singular vision that you have that you are working toward. And that is necessary. That vision, when I was at Center for Creative Leadership, they had this framework of direction, alignment, and commitment, DAC, that kind of gave you the ability in an organization to really understand how well teams are working together, where not doing as well as they could, and an ability to identify that and actually make it better. But I think one of the pieces that was missing for me was the vision aspect. Without a vision, without a Steve Jobs, without somebody who has that singular vision, direction, alignment, commitment isn't all that helpful. And in my experience, the average employee, the general employee, your general accountant, your general project manager, your general product manager, I say this myself as a general product manager, project manager, whatever the role is, they are working to fund their life outside of work. They are not working with the singular vision toward whoever started that business. And again, I don't want to paint with broad strokes. There's outliers everywhere. But for most of us, you get a job because you need to have bills to pay and you've got to pay bills, or there's things that you have to do. And you've got a particular skill set that can help that organization along that line of that singular vision of whoever's leading it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same point, particularly in economies or environments where the economy is doing well, people can leave jobs because they get a better offer, they get more money. I think the soft benefits, as we call them, can be really impactful to organizations. It costs a lot of money to replace people, whether they leave or they get fired. There's a huge impact there, not only financially, but with regard to the flow of work and delivery of work. And so really understanding the motivations of people and making that organization as much of a resource to the individual as the individual is to that organization, I think is really important. And those are the types of concepts that I really want to just, dive into as we go forward with this.
But, I'm going to get really basic here because I think you hit on it. That a lot of people work to fund their personal ideas outside of work. And I think there's some people who get lucky in their early life to know really exactly where they're heading with their work, whether it be scientists or doctors and it's not only that they chose a profession that they end up absolutely loving and believe that is at their core. Those are the lucky people. I'm not sure most people get to realize that so early in their lives. In 8th grade, I decided I wanted to go into advertising because I didn't like the way ads were on TV. And I thought, well, I'm going to change them all. So I got a focus very early on a field that evolved into an interest in art and design and applied arts. And I actually made a choice between going to Syracuse University's Newhouse School, which would have been more about the marketing, advertising, communication side. And I chose a design path at Rochester Institute of Technology, which was about graphic design and communication through design. Very different field, but it began because I had an interest really early on. But then what happened is, and this is what I try to coach my kids on, who are in their 20s, getting going with their careers, you really have to think hard about what is next for you that feeds your appetite for what you want to be doing. And I've had a successful career, but in terms of path and kinds of companies I've worked for and some pay things, but I don't think it really led me to what the things are that I really love. And what happened was I would get an offer and I'd take it. And then the next job was somebody offered me to come over to their place who I had been working with, so I took it. And it wasn't part of a plan. It was kind of convenient just to accept what was offered to me, moving me further away from perhaps the field of design that I had been, kind of set out to be on. And this realization came much later, and I followed through on some things to realize that, which I really feel are part of my life's rewards, that I actually broke off and did some things on the side that are extremely fulfilling. But it's really hard when you don't have a center of focus on where you're going to know how to shape what the next job should be and how you might maximize the work that you do at that employer to feed your appetite for the next thing.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that we tend to be, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this, and maybe there's not a soft way to say it, but I also think we tend to be a bit unrealistic market-wise in our society. So, and what I mean by that is, if you find early on that your main motivator and what you're attracted to in life is to really be a songwriter or a unique novel painter of some type, right? I think we also have to be realistic and understanding of the fact that you're not going to have 100 million painters in the U.S. that are all going to be able to make a living doing that. It's just not realistic. Now, you can definitely find jobs out there, but you also have to adapt. How motivated are you by that thing that's really driving you, right? For me, it was music. I spent the 90s into the early 2000s really pushing on it and until I found, my vision, my talent at this time in history just wasn't either I didn't understand how to get it to market in a way that was going to make it successful, or the market just didn't want it. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things, but it just means that I need to be able to have channels. I need to have outlets for that creativity at the same time, and then support myself. And I think that we need to be realistic about that as we move forward as a society, if we want to grow and really grow in any type of equitable fashion.
And Curt, I know 100 million people personally like you who aspire to become a successful musician. I probably can count 10 on my hands. And I fill both hands with the people I know that
if you go to any Irish pub on a Friday or Saturday night,
there they are.
Yeah. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that's the general broad description of where we connect, what we're trying to kind of figure out and move forward on, and how we want to do this. So the big question is, this is kind of the first episode, right? The introduction, as it were. But going forward, we've talked about kind of an outline, right? So how we go about it. We've got a bunch of guests we've identified we want to bring in. We'll go over news stories. But what's your best description with regard to what people can expect? Who's going to want to listen to us drone on about this stuff, and what's the value that we're going to provide?
Well, Curt, let's go back to our theme. Who's there?
Yeah.
The premise here is that it's kind of from a few different lenses. I mean, particularly the lens of yourself. Who am I? Who's in there is maybe a better way to put it. Who is in there that I need to be able to nurture and learn for and take advantage of opportunities and situations around me so I can move my own journey along. And the question mark is who is in there. The explanation point is, that's who's there. Yeah. And I think it's vice versa to the organizational leaders. Like, what do they know about the individuals that are working for the organization? And the question again is, who's there? What is it in our workforce that we have that's not tapped to serve other work even better? And then the aha moment is, wow, now we know, and we can do some realignment or work sharing, cross business development that may not have really revealed itself without some maybe formal ways to affect that.
I think that is hopefully where our line of splitting up the work of this project is exactly that, where you have this deeper insight, I believe, into the individual in the organization, whereas maybe it's the musician in me. I'm just hoping to put myself in contact with people smarter than me and then learn something from it. So that's sort of my ultimate goal is exactly that. But I do hope that as we go forward, and we spent the last week thinking about who are the people we want to talk with, and we have a really solid list of guests that we could start to bring onto the show. But at the end of the day, I really hope that, other than my own interest in my own education, that we can deliver some real insights to people who make decisions within organizations and have them kind of look at the world a little bit differently, even if it's only the small world, right? The world within a world.
Yes.
That they really kind of start to see that a little bit differently and think about it in what I believe is a more sustainable way than what we've seen maybe generally over the last couple of decades.
And I think my last thought would be that it has been a monumental shift in the employer-employee relationship in the recent 5 or 10 years, technology driven, and also the realization that success is coming very early for a lot of people, and a lot of people want to follow that same kind of path.
Mhm.
And that is disrupting how relationships with employers operate. So I think my last thought here is that I got really deeper into this track of thinking about it with less than a year ago. And between you and I think we're going to make this informative by our inquisitiveness. We're not necessarily the experts, but we want to learn and develop our own thinking around it. But we're going to pull in people that we're going to kind of tap into, people who are working on this for their livings, the future of work and how relationships are. So expect a lot of kind of I'll call it high energy engagement and inquiry and aha moments, and we'll continually tie it back to what our purpose is, which is on our theme, Who's There.